I understand that in the grand scheme of things, I live a very charmed life. I benefit from most of the privileges. And the reason I think feminism is so important isn't necessarily because of the ways I suffer under patriarchy. All of my privileges tend to insulate me from the worst effects of that. But there is a tendency to believe that if I don't suffer from something, then no one does. And people like myself who are in a position of a lot of privilege have a greater responsibility to step up and talk about these injustices, because we tend to be in a position where we can see them, but we can also find a way around them, and we might not always consider the ways that other people might not be able to navigate the world in the same way we do. In response to women who struggle to have their health problems taken seriously, really should just find another doctor. And in the short term, I agree that if you are aware that your doctor is not taking your health problems seriously, this is something you should do. You need to advocate for yourself. But this does not present an actual solution. The solution is not for women to be expected to fight a daily battle to be treated equally. Because even if this was possible, and even if every woman was successful in their fight 100% of the time, this would still put women at a disadvantage compared to all the people who do not have to expend the energy and time and resources and sanity to be treated equally, because for them, equality is just the default. And of course, this does not only apply to gender. Gender is the one I have most experience with. So some examples off the top of my head that I could think of in ways this might not work is if a woman is trying to find another doctor, but she doesn't even know that she's not being treated equally because she's not aware of this issue, or she doesn't have the medical knowledge to know that the treatment she's getting is not adequate, or what adequate treatment would even look like, because all she knows is having her pain and her symptoms written off as psychological, which is a common trend for women's pain to be considered exaggerated. And this is especially true with Black women. Even doctors today, Black women are considered to have a higher pain tolerance, and thus their pain is not taken as seriously. But when you don't take pain and symptoms seriously, people die and diseases go undiagnosed. And especially with things like cancer, early diagnosis is key to surviving. And having your pain and symptoms being taken seriously is life or death. A woman in a rural area where there is only one hospital and that already takes an hour to get to really doesn't have the option, the way I would, to go to another doctor. And if you have insurance that only will pay for your care if you go to the doctor referred, doctor shopping might not be an option. Or if you don't live in a metro area where you have access to many people of that specialty. And honestly, if we're talking about a system where not all doctors take women's symptoms and pain and healthcare seriously, or as seriously as they would if their patient was a man, good doctors are likely to be in short supply, they're likely to be concentrated in more wealthy neighborhoods, and they're likely to be booked for many weeks. So what happens if you do advocate for your own health and you do doctor shop and you finally find someone who it seems like they're going to take you seriously, but they can't meet you for 4 weeks? Or they can meet you, but it's at a very specific time where you can't get off work, or can't find someone to take care of the kids, or for whatever reason, you can't make that one appointment slot, whereas someone who isn't facing gender bias in medicine could expect to go to any doctor and be taken seriously. This is still inequality. Or maybe you're in a situation where your first doctor was absolutely awful, and your next one was better but still inadequate, but comparatively you thought that was a win. So you still didn't get the treatment you needed, but you did get better treatment. And of course you're going to be paying a lot more than someone who can go to the doctor and expect that they will be taken seriously. And obviously men can go to the doctor and not get good treatment and not be taken seriously, but it is very unlikely that this is going to happen because they're a man. That just isn't the stereotype, that isn't the social norm, that men shouldn't be believed when they talk about their pain or their symptoms, or that their symptoms are all in their head and there's an easy solution and they just need to eat better or lay down or have less stress and things will be fine. Men absolutely can get bad medical treatment and not be taken seriously, but it's unlikely that this is happening because they're a man, and that's the distinction. Or maybe the woman has to stick to doctors that speak her language or offer a translator. Or maybe she's undocumented and she could only go to doctors where she trusts them not to work with ICE. Or maybe she has work or caretaking responsibilities, being that women work longer hours and are burdened with the lion's share of caretaking responsibilities. This is more likely to be true for women. Maybe women barely have time for the first appointment as it is, so they don't have time to shop around for a doctor that will take them seriously. Obviously, we should encourage women to be advocates for themselves, to demand to be taken seriously. But like many things, this is not a solution. This is a Band-Aid at best. And this is the liberal answer to things often, is things that won't fix the underlying problem. Ultimately, we need to address the root of the issue, which is why women's symptoms and pain are not being taken seriously, why it took us so long to include women in clinical studies, because the thinking was that including women would just muck everything up, as if women weren't half the population, and for doctors to understand all the ways that women's bodies differ in relation to disease and overall health, because our health and our lives should be treated as just as important as any man's. Including women in clinical trials and making sure that drugs are safe with birth control and knowing how they affect pregnant women and knowing how drugs and medical devices and treatments affect women specifically is not optional. It is the bare minimum. We can't continue to ignore over half the population of the world and pretend that we have equality. It is a sickness where we blame the marginalized for their own marginalization rather than the systems that keep it that way. And as long as we do that, nothing is going to change. We have to stress that this is not acceptable, that the marginalized should not be blamed for the ways that they are treated unequally. Yes, they should fight to be treated equally, but that should not be necessary, and that is not a solution. And no one should be shamed because they didn't fight hard enough to be treated equal, because that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. And obviously, I want to encourage women to take their health seriously and question their doctors and get educated on all the ways that medicine treats women differently, and we are at more risk of dying of heart attacks because our symptoms aren't taken as seriously. And I could go on for ages on all the problems that exist, and I am no expert in this, but we do need to demand that this be taken seriously and that the blame not be put on women because they didn't fight hard enough just to be treated the same way a man would.